Thank you so much to our panelists. Appreciate your remarks. And now it's my privilege to introduce our next speaker, who is going to share with us the latest information on the state of carbon management deployment in North America and around the globe. Jared Daniels, who is the CEO of the Global CCS Institute, is here with us today. He joined the Institute as the Chief Executive Officer in October of 2021, bringing with him over 20 years of international collaboration and leadership on clean energy and sustainable development. He has broad experience in energy and deep experience in carbon capture and storage, having worked with many countries, multilateral organizations, NGOs, and companies on technology deployment and development of governmental policy. Prior to joining the Institute, Jared led the Office of Strategic Planning, Analysis, and Engagement within the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Carbon Management. So please join me in welcoming Jared to the stage.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. And it is great to see all of you here. I think our earlier speaker, Rolf, really did a lot of the work that I was going to do. And so my job up here is going to be easy, especially based on the three presentations you just heard in terms of the CCS 101, what the technology looks like, what the opportunities are for utilization, for direct air capture, and the high-level picture of how durable geologic storage is from Dr. Sally Greenberg. And so let me take just a moment and give you the sort of the state of carbon management, take a step back, not just look at North America, but look globally, just to frame the conversation of where carbon management fits in on a global scale, alongside all the other low carbon technology approaches that we as a global society need to find ways to work together to do successfully. So a little bit before I begin, in case you don't know the Global CCS Institute, we are an international think tank, member-based. Our mission is to accelerate the commercial deployment of CCS toward a net zero future globally, right? And working as a community, as a global CCS carbon management community, we're a nice agile part of that. We have over 200 members that span governments and industry and technology providers, NGOs. Many of you in this room are part of our membership. And we've got about 60 staff right now. It's a really nice mix of chemical engineers that know the above ground capture, and geologists that know the durable geologic storage, and folks that are really good at outreach and advocacy, and lawyers that know the policy and the legal and regulatory issues. And all of that together is what makes the Institute as a think tank, try to work as best we can to work with all of you to accelerate deployment of CCS. Right? We do this through advocacy as our main goal at a global level, and then at a national and a local level as best we can, to really harness all that expertise and do some analysis and really catalytic thought leadership on critical path issues, and then share knowledge, right, and connect the dots, very similar to what we're doing here at CO2 Connect, right, to learn from each other to help accelerate progress toward deployment. And so as we've heard already, right, I always like to take a step back and say, why do we need to do CCS? And, it's just the climate math that says we need to have gigaton scale deployment of both point source carbon capture and storage and carbon dioxide removal in parallel and additive to all the other carbon emission reduction technology deployment we need, across all aspects of society, right? The scientific consensus is clear that CCS is an absolutely necessary component of that overall climate change mitigation tool set, right? As we've already heard, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, all of their meta-analysis of all the math and rigorous analysis is done, suggests CCS is absolutely critical. You just can't close on the climate math without a healthy amount of CCS in most cases. The International Energy Agency, the IEA, all of their analysis also suggests that CCS is essential. No one has a crystal ball exactly of what these scenarios, and what the world is actually going to achieve moving forward. But, on the order of 10 to 15% of where we are today to where we need to get to net zero, from my perspective, that's about the order of magnitude of the potential role, the necessary role for carbon capture, storage, carbon dioxide removal, right? At high level, efficiency gets us a long way, maybe a third of the way we want to get to, right? In terms of, end use efficiency, how we generate energy, how we use energy, personal choices of how we live our lives, that's great, right? Gets us a long way at very, very low cost on a per ton avoided perspective. Then we need to electrify as many aspects of society as we can and drive renewable energy generation as much as possible in the stationary power sector. Wind and solar, nuclear in societies where that's socially acceptable, right? And even after we do all of that, then what remains are those harder sources to decarbonize, the point sources where even if you drove those processes by 100% renewable electricity, the chemistry of the process emits CO2, right? And so those are some of the unique applications and necessary applications for carbon capture and storage to help meet our climate change mitigation goals. And so at high level, right, there's really 4 key roles that we see for carbon capture and storage in helping society reach net zero, right? Achieving the deep decarbonization in those hard-to-abate industries. Steel and cement, fertilizer to feed the 8 billion people and growing in this world, right? Again, these industries that have process emissions, there is no other technology choice to decarbonize those other than through carbon capture. It also enables the production of low-carbon hydrogen at scale now. We can begin to build out that hydrogen infrastructure, right? As hydrogen can help decarbonize various aspects of heavy industry and society, we can start to build that infrastructure now with hydrogen produced from hydrocarbons integrated from the beginning with carbon capture and storage. So that's another opportunity for CCS deployment that many regions of the world are progressing, right? Producing low-carbon dispatchable power that can help firm some of that variability you see in some of the renewable produced electricity. That's another appropriate role. And then finally, as we just heard from our last panel speaker, helping to deliver those net negative emissions. All the math says we're going to need gigatons of that through carbon dioxide removal, like direct air capture, bio-based processes integrated with CCS. So those are really, at high level globally, the roles that we see. The good news is, there's a pipeline of projects that is growing. You can see the shape of this exponential curve. Right now, there's 37 operating large-scale projects globally, capturing on the order of 50 million ton per annum of CCS. Under construction right now, I believe, are 20 large-scale projects, and that number is incrementing up because of the policy tools that we've already heard from the opening speaker today. There's on the order of 100 additional projects in various stages of advanced development, another 100 in early stage development, and on the order of probably 500 projects that have been announced globally. Again, all driven and catalyzed by the strong policies that we've already heard in some of the framing remarks. We expect this trend to continue. I certainly hope this trend continues because this is what it's going to take to get us to those gigaton scale of deployment for both the point source carbon capture and storage and the carbon dioxide removal. So just a global map, again, just to set the global context. This is where all the projects are moving. You can see much activity here in the United States, right? We are just, wonderfully blessed with great resources that we heard from Sally Greenberg in terms of some of those porosity and permeability and good storage geologies in North America, but also infrastructure that already exists. We've been doing, enhanced recovery since 1972 for 50 years, and so there's a lot of infrastructure that we can leverage here in North America. So a lot of activity combined then with the Catalytic Inflation Reduction Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law that have really spurred forward progress here. You can also see much activity in Europe, a good number of dots in the Middle East. They have 3 projects currently up and operating there, about 10% of global capacity. A lot of good work and an exponential curve at China speed and scale and pace opportunity in China, and then a lot of activity and interest in Southeast Asia as well. So globally, a lot of CCS is being progressed throughout the world. Lots of increased ambition, right, across the world. We've already talked about a little bit, but again, how catalytic the Inflation Reduction Act has been, not just for what we're going to do here in the United States, across all forms of carbon emission reduction, right, including carbon capture and storage and carbon dioxide removal, but catalytic in how it's jump-started policy movement in a positive direction on a global basis, right, truly catalytic, the largest down payment on climate that mankind has known, right? So somewhere on the order of maybe 1/4 gigaton is now investable in the United States on paper because of the strong federal policy support. In Europe, the European Union, right, they have goals to reach on the order of 0.5 gigaton of installed capacity by 2050 to help meet their net zero targets. And their Net Zero Industry Act aims to have 50 million ton per annum of storage available by the end of this decade. As a sovereign country, the UK has a roadmap that foresees 20 to 30 million ton per annum by 2030 just in the UK alone. In Japan, if I swing to Asia, they are working on long-term roadmaps and strategies of how CCS fits into their overall decarbonization strategy. They've got aggressive targets as well there. If I go to the Middle East and Saudi Arabia, right, short term, they want to stand up the first phase of a hub and cluster, a CCS network, operational by 2027, 9 million ton per annum. That's the first phase toward their hub that has a target of 44 million ton by 2035. So an opportunity to move at pace, speed, and scale in the Middle East as well. And then in Brazil, just one example, the world's largest operating project has quietly been operating for years deep under the surface of the ocean. It's the Lula project that Petrobras operates, one project capturing and re-injecting 10 million ton per annum today, and they have goals to speed that up to 40 million ton per annum in the near future as well. So again, we in North America, we in the United States are not in this alone. There is much activity globally, right? If you frame it the way that the IEA does, they say, look, we've got to do everything that we can as society to help decarbonize and meet our net zero goals. They came out with this Credible Pathways report about half a year ago that says in the energy sector, we have to really decarbonize electricity and electrify as much as we can. We need to reduce deforestation and do other things in the biosphere as quickly as possible. We need to tackle non-CO2 emissions, and that's mostly fugitive methane emission reduction. And we need to do carbon management, carbon capture and storage, and carbon dioxide removal, right? All of these things additive together in parallel at scale is what is going to take to get us to net zero and to our goals. The United States is trying to champion this, again, building off of all of what we have here, both policy and technical expertise in all of what we as a community bring together. President Biden announced at the Major Economies Forum standing up a global carbon management challenge. You can see the list of countries that have now joined on. This is for all of these countries to work together collaboratively to help accelerate deployment of CCS, both in their sovereign territories and globally, to help the rest of the world, especially the developing nations, come along and accelerate their journey as well. So really, a case study, this is all policy driven, right, until there's an effective price on carbon emissions or a price for carbon abatement. This will be policy driven in the near term. We're already going to talk, and we have already today, we'll talk much more about the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, right? $12 billion to my former colleagues at the Department of Energy working to do good and do projects with the funding that they have in hand. All the tax credits, a lot of good policy at a federal level, interesting conversations. How do we combine that and stack that with opportunities at a state level to support project development and deployment, right? You can see we have well over 100 real projects under development here in the United States now. Truly exciting times for the carbon management community. One of the key mechanisms at a federal policy tool are the tax credits, the so-called 45Q, which is named after the section of the tax code. We started these back in 2008. It took a long time to incrementally dial these in and learn our lessons and get them to the point where they are today at the figures of merit and the way that this tax policy is set up, right, that can drive investment and make these projects in this infrastructure investable. And we can talk about that later, but again, this is one of the key tools, policy tools at a federal level that are really catalytic and we're really excited about today. In addition to that, again, you can see, and I borrowed this graphic, I think, from colleagues at the Department of Energy, a number of programs that DOE is now implementing to put funding, federal funding, to good use in this space. And whether it's for pipeline infrastructure, whether it's for feed studies, whether it's for project development, both above ground and below ground, there's tremendous opportunity. And again, this is part of this catalytic opportunity that we have here in the United States. The entire world is watching what we do here in the carbon management realm. Our neighbors to the north, similar policies, a little bit different than ours, but they are making great strides and progress as well. And again, they've got a tax credit that is modeled after our 45Q loosely. You can see the figures of merit here in terms of the amount of tax credit it provides. One of the things that I, as an individual, like, their tax credit gets cut in half after 2030. right, for prudent fiscal policy, but also as a signal to say, hey, let's get a move on. You guys, should accelerate progress for this project development. A number of other policy tools, and again, the take-home message here is it's not one policy tool. They have to be fit together. They can be stacked and additive at national and subnational levels, right? And they have to be tuned to what's societally and socially acceptable in those locations and jurisdictions, right? What works for us here in North America doesn't work in Europe, doesn't work in China. They have other policies that will be more efficient and effective. Not a one-size-fits-all, but clearly policy-driven. By these policies in North America, you can just see graphically, where all of these projects are. Again, we've got a number of plants up and running, great infrastructure to leverage, and a lot of people leaning into this space. As a community, the carbon management community, there's been tremendous engagement between the CCS folks and the broader financial community here. Again, driven by the policy tools that are now in place that makes this space investable for certain applications of carbon management. Around the world, there's tremendous developments in policy. You can read here in Europe, they've got a Net Zero Industry Act. They're developing a broader European-based strategy, more on a global basis across all of their member countries. They're funding R&D both on carbon capture and storage and on carbon capture and utilization. Over 20 projects have been invested, and that is accelerating as well. Individual member states, it's been wonderful to see how quickly some forward progress has been able to occur. That social engagement, that engagement with communities, the social support for CCS as part of an overall strategy to decarbonize the entire aspects of humankind and society there. If you look to the Netherlands, you look to Denmark, Denmark is a great example, went from really CCS agnostic to a really healthy conversation about, from government to the communities of how this is just an imperative to help decarbonize some of their industry, to strong support with billions of euro of public funding, and now they're moving forward with projects there in a relatively short period of time, just several years to get from we really don't know what these topics are about to full, strong community support. Yes, please, we want to do this. We want these projects here. So really great forward projects and opportunity in Europe. In the Middle East and North Africa, again, about 10% of the current projects are now standing up there and operating well. Tremendous ambition and focus going into this year's COP, and so watch this space. I think they're going to have some accelerated progress in the near term. And then in the Asia Pacific, a lot of progress at project level in a number of countries, again, being championed and led into the region by Japan. Tremendous work in China. Just last August, China stood up its first 1 million ton per annum project capturing CCS at a Sinopec facility, petrochemical facility. They operated their first dense phase CO2 pipeline, 109 kilometers. That is now up and running as of several months ago. Under construction of a 1.5 million ton per annum project capturing from a coal plant, China Huanong Company coal plant. That is under construction now. First phase of a 2 million ton per annum capture on a steel facility is now under construction as well. So again, tremendous pace of change and opportunity and need for accelerated deployment in China as well. At high level, this is all going to be driven by global policy, right? In order to enact that, you need strong, durable regulations that provide the certainty that will allow investment to flow. It is very nice to see, because I've been working in the space for 20 years, that CCS is now in the same sentence alongside wind and solar and what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change comes out with in terms of these are the technologies, this is a portfolio of what we as humankind are going to need to deploy to meet our climate goals. CCS is explicitly in 27 countries, nationally determined contributions, NDCs, and that number is incrementing and growing. And again, a number of countries are looking toward carbon management as part of their overall all of the above solution to meet our goals. This requires closer collaboration and cooperation with all of us. Meetings like today are just a wonderful example. We need to do this at local levels. We need to do this at national levels. We need to do this at a global level as well. Just a quick couple of words, and I know we had a primer already on carbon dioxide removal. All the carbon math and the climate math say we need gigatons of deployment of carbon dioxide removal in parallel to the point source capture to meet our goals. And again, look forward to the conversation here. We already had a great discussion of the appropriate role of direct air capture. again, this can also be looked at as a backstop if and when society says we're actually going to, lean forward and really invest in all forms of carbon mitigation. This can set that ultimate, price tag to society, and again, a very important technology. So at high level, and we already heard this, right, on the order of somewhere between 100 and 1,000 gigaton are going to be required between now and the end of the century of carbon dioxide removal to meet our goals. Lots of different pathways and opportunities. We are going to need all of these in parallel as much as we can, is the bottom line. Opportunities for shared infrastructure, no matter where you capture the CO2, right, if you want to utilize it or durably store it in the geosphere, right, there's opportunities and synergies across all that shared infrastructure. And again, this is not a substitute for mitigation. We need all of this in parallel. This is a lot of work. This is why we're all in this room together. At the end of the day, and I'm biased because I'm a former government guy, governments do a great job at using taxpayer funds for R&D and doing first-of-a-kind demonstrations. If we want to get deployment at scale, right, that is a job for the private sector. That needs durable policies and regulations that allow investment to flow, right? That requires finance. Something on the order of $1 trillion US is going to be required in the next, several decades, right, to be consistent and along the lines of what all the math and models project is going to be the required role of CCS alongside everybody else. That may seem like a daunting number, but it is clearly in the norm of what we have done before. If government and industry and the finance sector and academia and NGOs, if we all work together, we can do this, we can get this done. But it requires that coordination and collaboration of all of us working together. That's why meetings like this and CO2 Connect and what we're all in here talking about are why it's so critical. Right? There's various, opportunities, various mechanisms, right? Bringing the conversation from the carbon management community to the financial community, having that be a great two-way conversation, iteratively to learn from each other and figure out how we're going to work together, that is critical path in my perspective in terms of getting success and driving deployment. Right? How is CCS and carbon management represented in ESG schemes and taxonomies, right? These are non-trivial issues that we all need to be a part of and do our part to make sure that all of these policy conversations, all of these investment decisions and discussions, right, are informed with as academically rigorous analysis, facts, and figures as possible. That is in all of our best interest from all of our perspectives to work together to do that. Right? So at high level, what's it going to take to realize CCS at scale again, to get to those gigatons of deployment that all the climate math says is absolutely required, right? There's just no way to get to net zero without it, right? We're going to need to define what are the appropriate roles of carbon capture and storage and carbon dioxide removal, in addition and in parallel with everything else that we need to do as a society, right? How do we create the long-term value on storage, geologic timeframe storage and utilization of CO2, right? How do we support identifying, where all those storage opportunities and resources are? We have a great understanding here in North America of opportunities in the subsurface, and you got a snippet of that from Dr. Sally Greenberg in terms of what she presented. There are places on the map globally that are essentially blank. We need to work as a community globally to help accelerate the understanding of that, build the understanding of the subsurface, build the human capital, right, to the folks that are going to be the regulators in those jurisdictions and regions to make sure that this is done responsibly and well, and we pick the best places to store the CO2, right? How do we develop specific laws and regs and policy that drive all of this is extremely important as well, and there's many lessons we can learn and share from each other. And again, identifying opportunities for economy of scale through CCS networks, hubs, and clusters. A number of companies that are in the room here, just two as example, maybe Oxy and Exxon, opportunities for these networks to really get us to the economy of scale and to speed deployment. Tremendous opportunity here in North America, other regions of the world as well. And then really enabling finance, because at the end of the day, this has to be investable in order to scale to gigatons. So hopefully I've given you a broad global overview of the challenge in front of us. We are all in this together. If I can be an individual resource for you, if the Global Institute can be a resource, that is our day job, is to help all of us have success speeding the curve forward. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to a really good conversation over the next couple of days. Thank you. And I think we've got time for questions. If any of you have any now, and again, I think we've had a couple of panel presents before me too. I know I stand between you and a break, but if there's any questions you have, I'm sure you're not the only one in the room. So please. Well. Yeah. Thanks. So the question was, are we seeing membership grow? So I left the U.S. Department of Energy, came to the Institute about 2 years ago. Membership has doubled in that time frame from 100 members to over 200 now. And it's interesting, finance sector organizations are joining as members because they see this interest and opportunity. Shipping companies are joining and becoming members of the Institute because they see shipping CO2 as a commodity as a business market opportunity in the future, right? We're seeing interest from cement industry and steel industry, right? Because again, all of the engineering and the math says there's no other technology to give you those deep decarbonization of those heavy industry. And so absolutely, we're seeing membership grow in numbers and broaden as well. Again, consistent with all the analysis says this is how where we're going to need to deploy CCS.
Just as a quick follow-up, how would you characterize, it's sort of an unfair question, but just given where you sit, how would you characterize the level of, I guess, literacy, I'll call it, on CCS?
Yeah, so the question was, how do I characterize the level of literacy on CCS? And, the simple answer is there's no one-size-fits-all answer. It is a continuum. There are some countries and companies and sectors of society that are extremely educated in the space, and there are others that don't even know what the acronym is CCS means and have never even heard of that, right? And so, it depends on where you are globally. In North America, we're sort of on the leading edge of that curve. Europe and, the Middle East and China are there as well. Japan's, been doing this for a long time. A lot of work that we need to do collaboratively and collectively in Africa and in South America and in developing Southeast Asia. There is a tremendous need for all of us as a global community to help share the lessons we've learned. It's taken us 20, 30 years to get to where we are here in the United States. All the climate math says we don't have that amount of time for deployment in these other regions. That's a big part of my day job is how do we harness all of our collective strength and really speed the curve on a global basis. Yeah. Other questions? All right, well, thank you for the attention. I think there is a breakout next. I'm here. I've got a couple of colleagues from the Institute as well, and I look forward to a really healthy conversation for the rest of the conference. Thanks again.